Normative Islam would be what the religion actually says about itself. What does the religion say about itself? What is it? How do we know what Islam is? Is Islam simply the hijab? You see, if you go to, now you have, for instance, in Syria, you have a hijab, like it's a raincoat. There's nothing traditional about that. It's a European coat that, however that came in, I mean, must have been some first woman that started that, right? But that is not a traditional dress. If you want to see a traditional Shami dress, you have to go to Palestinian villages or Syrian villages where they wear those traditional. They used to have their own little, it would tell you knew what village they were from based on the patterns on the hijab, right? So you would know where they were from. But now you have, for instance, the chador, which is basically the Iranian version of the hijab, which probably is close to what some of the early Muslim women were wearing, but it wasn't black. I mean, we know that black was actually, they couldn't sell the black hijabs in the 3rd century in Medina, and they actually, Darimi had to write some lines of poetry for this poor Iraqi hijab merchant who brought all this black cloth and none of the women wanted it. And so he wrote this thing about how tempting black was on women and how good it made them look. And suddenly they were selling out of the black hijabs, right? Early marketing. But the point is that Muslim women, this idea that black somehow is black is a mourning dress. It's what people wear like for funerals and things like that, right? Black. But this idea in Tunisia, in Morocco, women wore white and wear black. If you go to West Africa, women have always worn colorful garments. In Mauritania, they wore what they call Nil, right, which was a blue, and it actually made them blue. And the men wore the blue turbans from it, so they're called the blue men, the zurq, because they would turn blue from it. But the women actually thought it was attractive. Their whole skin got dyed blue. So you see these Mauritanian women, they look blue. They don't wear that anymore. Now they wear the colorful milhafa, which was introduced by merchants. So those change, but does the hijab change? Do the essential demarcations of the hijab change? That's normative Islam. Descriptive Islam is how they choose to wear that hijab. But normative Islam is what tells you what the hijab is. All right, there's a big difference between the two. Now, the way that our scholars, when in the very early period of Islam, the Quran was clear. And the Quran, our Usuli scholars differentiate between mutawatir and ahad. Mutawatir is factual. It's just simply historical. It's a historical account of something. And the point between mutawatir is so many people have seen it. So many people have transmitted it. They have so many multiple sources that it could not be possible that they could have conspired to make it up. So we know, for instance, in 1776, if you want to use that dating, if you want to use another dating, I mean, I once saw some Native American argue with Adler, and Adler said, well, surely we can agree on historical facts. And he said, like what? And he said that America was discovered by Columbus in 1492. Big mistake to say to a Native American. And he just threw it back. He said, I don't accept that fact. First of all, 1492 is not a Native American dating, so I don't accept the date. Second of all, we weren't discovered. We knew we were here, right? So, but generally, in 1776, all of us can agree, unless we have a nutcase in the audience, all of us can agree that a group of people in Philadelphia got together and they signed this thing called the Declaration of Independence, right? We can all agree on that. Nobody's going to disagree about that. That is mutawatir. So if you say, no, it was actually 1775, it was a scribe's mistake, okay, prove it. You can make a historical case for that. There's a PhD in India who's a Hindu who's arguing that the Taj Mahal was built by Hindus, not by Muslims. And the Muslims just claimed it later. And so he's got a PhD, he's got a website, you can go on the website. But as far as everybody's concerned, he's a nutcase. PhD notwithstanding. because there are plenty of nutcases with PhDs. So if you go against mutawatir, you're just simply denying reality, which is one of the reasons I wrote an article called How the Holocaust Undermines Islam. And the point of that, denial of the Holocaust undermines Islam. The point of that, and I asked Dr. Khalid Blankenship, who I trust, as a really, really reputable historian who also knows Islamic tradition, did he think the Holocaust was mutawatir? And he said, yes, I would consider it mutawatir. So for me, that's enough to say that if you're denying that, you're undermining our tradition. Because what you're saying is mutawatir evidence is not proof of something. So that is what, now all of the Quran is mutawatir in terms of its source. In terms of its meaning, right? Because you have qat'iyyatun nas and dhaniyatun nas. The qat'iyya is that it's absolutely sound in its source. That's mutawatir. But the meaning of the text, if all of the ulama agreed on it, and we had hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said this is what it means, then we would have to say this is the meaning of the text. But if there isn't that agreement, then it becomes dhanniya. It's probable, the meaning. But the meaning is exhausted linguistically. And this is why our scholars exhausted the meaning possibilities of language. No human civilization in history, and I would call as my authority and appeal to authority, is a legitimate form of argument. It's the weakest according to scholastics, but it is a legitimate form of argumentation to appeal to authority. Franz Rosenthal, one of the great Jewish Orientalists, wrote a book called Knowledge Triumphant. And in that book, he argues that no civilization in human history was more committed and had as its central theme and purpose the acquisition, preservation, development, and transmission of knowledge. That this is the Islamic civilization. It was about knowledge. And so it is not fortuitous that the Quran begins with Iqra. It is not fortuitous that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا. I was only sent to teach knowledge. مُعَلِّمًا, to allama ilman. The masdar is knowledge. I was sent to teach knowledge. All of these things are at the core of what the meaning and purpose of Islam is as a religion. It is about knowledge.